So 250 years ago, right now, the revolution was well underway. The American Revolution had been started. The Continental Congress was meeting in this building, Independence Hall. And one thing I've been doing every day is just checking letters that the Founding Fathers wrote back and forth to each other. So I figured I'd check today and see if I find anything interesting and share it with you. I've got my laptop right here. So I'm gonna be looking down and checking for letters. Well, hello YouTube. I don't think we have too much time. It's too hot and my battery is dying, but I'm out here, so let's read at least one letter before my laptop dies of batteries and then runs out of battery, and then we'll go home and finish it. So no diary, no Washington's weather report today. We have Abigail Adams to John Adams, the Massachusetts delegates to George Washington, remarks on the Quebec Bill Part 2, instructions from the Continental Congress to George Washington from Brigadier General Horatio Gates, and to George Washington from Massachusetts delegates. So there's a lot to go through. There are a lot of interesting things here. Let's start with instructions from the Continental Congress. We'll see what these look like. Instructions from the Continental Congress. In Congress, Philadelphia, June 22nd, 1775. This Congress, having appointed you to be General and Commander-in-Chief of the Army of the United Colonies and of all the forces raised or to be raised by them and all others who shall voluntarily offer their service and join this said army for the defense of American liberty and for repelling every hostile invasion thereof, you are to repair with all expedition to the colony of Massachusetts Bay and take charge of the army of the United Colonies. For your better direction, first, you are to make a return to us as soon as possible of all forces which you shall have under your command, together with your military stores and provisions, and also as exact an account as you can obtain of the forces which compose the British Army in America. Secondly, you are not to disband any of the men you find raised until further direction from this Congress, and if you shall think their numbers not adequate to the purpose of security, you may recruit them into a number you shall think sufficient, not exceeding double that of the enemy. Thirdly, in all cases of vacancy occasioned by death or removal of a colonel or other inferior officer, you are by brevet or warrant under your seal to appoint another person to fill up such vacancy until it shall be otherwise ordered by the provincial convention or assembly of the colony, from whence the troops in which such vacancy happen shall direct otherwise. Fourthly, you are to victual at the Continental expense all such volunteers as have joined or shall join the United Army. Fifthly, you shall take every method in your power consistent with prudence to destroy or make prisoner of all persons who now are or who hereafter shall appear in arms against the good people of the United Colonies. Sixthly, and whereas all particulars cannot be foreseen, nor positive instructions for such emergencies so beforehand given, but that any things must be left to your prudent and discreet management, as occurrences may arise upon the place or from time to time fall out, you are therefore, upon all such accidents or any occasion that may happen, to use your best circumspection and advise with your council of war to order and dispose of the said army under your command as may be most advantageous for the obtaining the end for which these forces have been raised, making it your special care in discharge of the great trust committed unto you that the liberties of America receive no detriment. By order of Congress, John Hancock, President. In addition to your instructions, it is resolved by Congress that the troops, including the volunteers, be furnished with camp equipage and blankets, if necessary, at the Continental expense. That the officers now in the Army receive their commissions from the General and Commander-in-Chief. that a sum not exceeding 2 millions of Spanish mil dollars be emitted by the Congress in bills of credit for the defense of America. Chase Thomas Secchi, Secretary? By order of Congress, John Hancock, President. Now, let's read some footnotes. The document in the Huntington Library is apparently the one that George Washington received because it is endorsed in his writing. The text is in Charles Thomas's writing, except for the words Philadelphia, June 22nd, 1775, and by order of Congress appearing twice, which are in John Hancock's writing. Each man signed his own name. The instructions were drafted by the committee appointed on 16th of June to draw up George Washington's commission: Richard Henry Lee, Edward Rutledge, and John Adams. On 20th June, the committee reported the instructions to Congress, which promptly approved them. The next day, Mr. Patrick Henry informed the Congress that the general had put into his hand sundry queries to which he desired the Congress would give an answer. George Washington's queries were referred to a committee composed of Silas Deane, Patrick Henry, John Rutledge, Samuel Adams, and Richard Henry Lee, who reported to Congress on 22nd of June. In apparent response to their report, Congress that same day passed 6 resolutions concerning the Army. Among them were 3 resolutions which appear at the bottom of George Washington's instructions. Although Congress, this is the second footnote, although Congress appointed all general officers for the Continental Army, the field and company grade officers for the regiments and other units were usually appointed by the legislative body of the colony in which they were raised. For an example of George Washington's use of his brevetting power, see the draft of Christopher Green's Brevet Commission as Lieutenant Colonel, dated 12th of September, 1775. Okay, that was interesting. Continuing on, we did the instructions. We could read a letter from Horatio Gates or from the Massachusetts delegates. I think these are the same. In compliance with your request, we have considered. In compliance with your request, we have considered. Okay, let's do that then. Please zoom in. There we go. Yes, to George Washington from the Massachusetts delegates, 22nd of June, 1775. Sir, Philadelphia, June 22nd, 1775. Sir, in compliance with your request, we have considered of what you propose to us, and are obliged to give you our sentiments very briefly and in great haste. In general, sir, there will be 3 committees, either of a Congress or of a House of Representatives, which are and will be composed of our best men, such whose judgment and integrity may be most relied on: the Committee on the State of the Province, the Committee of Safety, and the Committee of Supplies. But lest this should be too general, we beg leave to mention particularly Masters Bodwin, Sever, Dexter, Greenleaf, Darby, Pitts, Otis of the late Council, Honorary John Winthrop, Esquire, LL.D. Joseph Howley, Esquire of Northampton, James Warren, Esquire of Plymouth, Colonel Palmer of Braintree, Colonel Ornay and Eldridge, Gary, Esquire of Marblehead, Dr. Warren, Dr. Church, Mr. John Pitts of all of Boston, Dr. Langdon, President of Harvard College, and Dr. Chauncey and Dr. Cooper of Boston, Colonel Foster of Brookfield. The advice and recommendations of these gentlemen, of some others whom they may introduce to your acquaintance, may be depended upon. With great sincerity, we wish you an agreeable journey and a glorious campaign, and are with much esteem and respect, sir, your most obedient servants, John Adams, John Hancock, Samuel Adams, John Hancock, John Adams, Thomas Cushing, and Robert Treat Payne. Let's read this footnote. John Hancock addressed the cover, and each delegate signed his name on the letter. 3 of the Massachusetts delegates were Bostonians: John Hancock, Samuel Adams, and Thomas Cushing. John Adams lived in Braintree, and Robert Treat Payne of Taunton. Samuel Adams wrote to James Warren on this date: "Our patriotic General Washington will deliver this letter to you. The Massachusetts delegates have jointly given to him a list of the names of certain gentlemen in whom he may place the greatest confidence. Among these you are one. We have assured him that he may rely upon such others as you may recommend to him." Adams wrote a similar letter to Elbridge Gerry on this date. And on 21st of June, Thomas Cushing wrote a letter to James Bowdoin introducing George Washington. All right, great. Let's read some. This is a lot, I think, but let's read it anyway. All but 9 of the names listed here appear in John Adams' letter to George Washington of 19th or 20th of June, 1775, and are identified here. Former councilors: Benjamin Greenleaf of Newburyport and James Otis Sr. of Barnstable were elected to be re-established Massachusetts Council. Otis, father of the famous political pamphleteer James Otis Jr., served for a time as president of the new council. Richard Derby Jr. of Salem was elected to the old council in May 1774, but he did not become a member of the new council until May 1776. Both of the 2 militia colonels, Azor Orne, that's a cool name, and Jedediah Foster, were elected councilors on 21st of June, 1775. Orne declined to sit. Son of former councilor James Pitt, was one of the Committee of Supplies and had served on the Committee on the State of the province before it ceased to exist at the end of May 1775. Samuel Langdon, Charles Chauncey, and Samuel Cooper were congregational clergymen with honorary doctorates from Scottish universities, the first 2 from Aberdeen and Cooper from Edinburgh. Oh, that's wonderful. I am actually wearing an Edinburgh University t-shirt right now. Well, you probably can't see it. Let's see. Can you see the emblem? I don't think so. But there it is. I'm wearing University of Edinburgh represent. Let's see here. Okay. Langdon was pastor of a church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, until October 1774, when he became president of Harvard College. He served as chaplain to the American troops at Cambridge from 29th of April to 30th October 1775. Chauncey, pastor of the First Church of Boston, left Boston in May 1775 and lived with his wife at Medfield during the British occupation of the city. Cooper, pastor at Boston's Brattle Street Church, fled Boston with his wife on 8th April 1775 after learning that British authorities intended to arrest him for his outspoken opposition to the royal government. He stayed for a time at Weston and then moved to Waltham before returning to Boston when the British evacuated the city on March 1776. Next, let's do this part 2 of Remarks on the Quebec Bill. Well, this is quite a long one. Let's see if we can even get through it. But I did part 1, so I feel compelled to do part 2. Okay, let's go. Remarks on the Quebec Bill Part 2 by the author of The Farmer Refuted and Company. New York, June 22nd, 1775. Having considered the nature of this bill with regard to civil government, I am next to examine it with relation to religion, and to endeavor to shew that the Church of Rome has now the sanction of a legal establishment in the province of Quebec. In order to do this, the more satisfactorily, I beg leave to adopt the definition, given to an established religion by a certain writer who has taken great pains to evince the contrary. An established religion, says he, is a religion which the civil authority engages not only to protect but to support. This act makes effectual provision not only for the protection but for the permanent support of popery, as is evident from the following clause, and for the more perfect security and ease of the minds of the inhabitants of the said province, it is hereby declared that His Majesty, subjects professing the religion of the Church of Rome in the said province may have, hold, and enjoy the free exercise of the religion of the Church of Rome, subject to the King's supremacy and company, and that the clergy of the said church may hold, receive, and enjoy their accustomed dues and rights, etc. This is represented as a bare permission to the clergy to enjoy the usual emoluments of their functions, and not as a legal provision for their support. Okay, I am going to stop here. I'm going to skim this because, to be honest, I am getting very hot and I am sweating. It is over 100 degrees at midnight or 10 p.m. here in Philadelphia, and I need to go home because it is so hot that I don't think it is good for me to be out here any longer, especially in this somewhat sketchy park. So let's see here. Tides in Canada, it is said, are the property of the Romish Church, and permitting a tolerated church is to enjoy its own property is far short of the idea of an establishment. Okay, yeah, this is sort of about Canada and Catholicism and French law in Quebec. I think we will read this maybe at some point, but I get to decide what I am interested in, and at the moment I am not interested in this enough to read it all. I'll scroll through it, and if you want to read it, you can pause the video and read it yourself. Okay, there you go. Rivington's New York Gazetteer, June 22nd. Rivington was the author, so named, of The Farmer Refuted, and etc. Okay. Last but not least, let's look at what George Washington had to say to Horatio Gates on the 22nd of June, 1775. Dear General, this is Traveler's Rest, because remember, at this point, Washington was on his way up to Boston, I believe. Dear General, last night I was honored by the receipt of your obliging letter of the 17th instant. I shall obey your commands with all possible expedition, and hope to be in Philadelphia Thursday next, and wish earnestly to find you there. Oops. I must take the liberty to entreat it of you not to leave the Congress until you are provided not only with all the powers, but all the means their power can bestow. If it is indispensably necessary, you should leave Philadelphia before I get there. I hope to find with Colonel Harrison your positive and particular commands in regard to any business you may leave unsettled behind you. The request for the riflemen was well received in this province and in Maryland, Major Stevenson's commands one of the companies from hence, and I believe Captain Morgan the other, both excellent for the service. Colonel Crisp told me on Monday morning that his son had 80 riflemen ready to march. Those go for one of the companies from Maryland. Immediately upon the arrival of your express, I dispatched your packets to your brother and Colonel Stefan. If their answers don't come in half an hour, I will bring them with me. My grateful thanks are most respectfully due to the Congress for the very handsome manner in which they conferred their commission. I will not intrude more upon that time, which is now so precious to you, only to assure you I will not lose a moment in paying you my personal attendance with the greatest respect for your character and the sincerest attachment to your person. I am, dear General, your most faithful and obedient humble servant, Horatio Gates. Horatio Gates, the newly appointed Adjutant General of the Continental Army, had known George Washington since the ill-fated Braddock Expedition in 1755. An Englishman by birth, Gates entered the British Army at an early age and served in America as a captain throughout most of the French and Indian War. In 1762, he was promoted to major, but during the post-war period, he was frustrated in his attempts to gain further advancement. He sold his commission in 1769, and in 1772, he moved his family from England to America. The following year, he bought a plantation in the lower Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. His home, Traveler's Rest, stands near present-day Kearneysville, West Virginia. Gates visited at Mount Vernon 2nd and 3rd of May 1775, just before George Washington left to attend the Continental Congress. Gates served as George Washington's Adjutant General until May 1776, when he was promoted to the rank of Major General and was given a field command. He commanded the American forces in the Saratoga victory of 1777, but suffered a humiliating defeat at Camden, South Carolina in 1780. Gates apparently did arrive in Philadelphia on Thursday, 29th of June. Interesting. Gates joined George Washington at Cambridge by 9th of July. Okay, so maybe I was wrong earlier when I said they didn't meet. I thought George Washington was on the road by now, by 22nd of June, but maybe I was misremembering and he was on the road by 23rd of June. In any case, I do believe that Gates would not have met George Washington in Philadelphia on the 29th of June, unless I am completely misremembering and Washington left for Boston later than I remember and was on the road only by July 3rd or thereabouts. However, I believe that I am correct in thinking he would have left by 23rd of June, or at least would be on the road because, as we know, he has stopped giving his weather reports and his diary entries. So that's a little clue. Okay, let's read this last footnote here. Or maybe not the last, but we'll see. Footnote number 4. The county in which Gates lived raised one of the two Virginia rifle companies authorized by Congress. The other company was raised in neighboring Frederick County, Virginia by Daniel Morgan, the hard-driving frontiersman who later distinguished himself at Quebec and Saratoga, and in 1780 became a brigadier general in the Continental Army. The two Maryland rifle companies were raised in Frederick County, Maryland by Michael Cresap, youngest son of Thomas Cresap of Old Town, Maryland, and Thomas Price of the town of Frederick. Now, as a Pennsylvanian, I have a distinct dislike for the Cresap family. Maybe some of you other Pennsylvanians know about the Cresaps and their harassment of Pennsylvanians along the border and up the Susquehanna River Valley. You can look this up as the Cresaps War, but apparently they also served well in raising in the Maryland companies, and so for that I can forgive them potentially. But their war, the Cresap's War against Pennsylvanians, led in part to the establishment of the Mason-Dixon line, which is the southern border of Pennsylvania. So I have a little bit of, as a Pennsylvania native from Delaware County, I have a little bit of, a little bone to pick with the Cresaps. You know, they should stay in Maryland. And as Cresap said when he was arrested and brought to Philadelphia, he said Philadelphia was the most beautiful town in Maryland. And I disagree. I think Philadelphia is a Pennsylvania town through and through. Okay, with that little side note out of the way. The officers for these companies were selected by their respective county committees of safety. George Washington had long been a friend of the Stephenson family and knew well both Cresaps, with whom he was currently disputing claims to Western lands. Yeah, of course. The Cresaps loved to dispute lands. All right. George Washington may have met Daniel Morgan as early as 1755, when Morgan served as a wagoner in the Braddock expedition, or the following year when he was a member of John Ashby's Ranger Company. All 4 rifle companies were quickly raised. Volunteers presented themselves from every direction, one of Stephenson's men remembered some years later. None were received but young men of character and of sufficient property to clothe themselves completely, find their own arms and accoutrements. That is, an approved rifle, handsome shot pouch and powder horn, blanket, knapsack, and such decent clothing as should be prescribed, but which was at first ordered to be only a hunting shirt and pantaloons, fringed on every edge and in various ways. More riflemen were recruited than were authorized by Congress. Morgan raised 96 officers and men, Stephenson 95, and Price 85. The final strength of Cresap's company is not known. Difficulty in obtaining good rifles delayed the departure of the companies for several weeks. Morgan marched first, crossing the Potomac with his men on 15th of July, and by a series of forced marches he reached the American camp at Cambridge on 6th of August. Stephenson's and Price's companies followed close behind Morgan. Stephenson arrived at Cambridge on 11th August, and Price about the same date. Cresap's company was at Watertown, Massachusetts on 20th of August, and apparently reached Cambridge soon afterwards. All right, we have some people coming, so let's continue along here. Nope, up here. This is footnote number 5. Gates must have meant to say that if the answers did come within half an hour, he would bring them with him. George Washington's brother Samuel Washington and Adam Stephen, who had been George Washington's second in command in the Virginia Regiment during the French and Indian War, both lived in Berkeley County within a few miles of Travelers Rest. On this day, Samuel Washington wrote to Gates from his house, Harwood, "Your favor I received last night after I was in bed. I now enclose you 2 letters which shall be much obliged to you to take charge of. Would have waited on you myself, but am by appointment to meet some people on business this evening. As my brother has been prevailed on to take the command of the Continental Army, I am happy in your being with him in the capacity you and he mentions, as your greater experience will assist him in the arduous business. God grant you may both return safe to your families, crowned with laurels." James Gregory and Thomas Dunning's editions, Horatio Gates Papers. No correspondence between George Washington and his brother Samuel, or between George Washington and Adam Stephen, has been found for this period. Adam Stephen represented Berkeley County at the Second Virginia Convention in the spring of 1775, and the chairman of the Berkeley County Committee of Safety and commander of the county's militia, and was the chairman of the Berkeley County Committee of Safety and commander of the county's militia. Appointed a colonel in the Continental Army in February 1776. Stefan was promoted to brigadier general in September 1776 and major general in February 1777, but he was dismissed from the service in November 1777 for bad behavior. Samuel Washington, troubled by poor health and financial difficulties, played no role in the political or military affairs of the Revolution outside of Berkeley County. Okay, there you go. There are the letters. And that's Independence Hall. I'm here at night because it's so hot that I didn't want to come here during the day. It's still over 100 degrees, but we'll see. Maybe I'll come tomorrow morning to do the next one. And well, hopefully it'll be a little cooler. But yeah, at least I did one of them, right? So there you go. Thanks to the security guards for letting me be here. He's chilling over there. And if you like this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.